because I notice when I'm working with people, and you may have experienced this as well, and when you're giving readings, is that what people will say, well, my body is telling me to do this, or I love this person, so I'm supposed to stay in this relationship. How could you describe to someone the difference between, because I notice a lot of people will say, my body's telling me this, but they'll be in like infatuation from a younger part of self, or they're in a trauma response and really bonding to this person. But for you, what is the difference between maybe a fear-based choice or a fear-based thought process in your body versus intuition? What does that feel like?
Yeah. This is the big question in our field. I feel like
Yes.
this is the big question. Yeah, and I think oftentimes, just so much of my perspective now is informed by parts work and like embodied healing work. So what I try to do, and what I try to advise other people as well, is like to give yourself, I think sometimes that question comes up of like, is it fear or is it intuition? And there's like an urgency behind the question that just doesn't help. Like people come and they're like, is it this or is it this? I don't know. And like, I need to figure out, I need to know right now. And often, as intuitives, people coming to us, like they want us to tell them, sometimes. And so, and that I think is just, it can feel disempowering for the person, to be outsourcing that decision making and that process of discernment. I feel so strongly that I just really in my work want to be supporting people in being able to discern for themselves. And I think, just to try to answer it, I think one is just noting if there's urgency and if you're pushing, and the state of your body and mind when you're trying to make a determination, because the urgency and the pressure just doesn't is not going to help you be able to access that your intuitive knowing. It's just, it makes it really hard and confusing. And if you have a very active mind, especially, I always describe my mind as like embroidered, like there's like a lot of embroidery and upholstery going on. And I can just build up very quickly a lot of layers around and complexity around things. So if you can take a breath and listen to the parts, give yourself space to really listen to the parts that are scared, listen to the fear, and being willing to not to agree with it necessarily, but to be present to what's here, and to listen to the concerns and the protests and whatever else, is coming forward within you from that place of fear, and to give it a chance to be witnessed and seen. And that's part of just not spiritually bypassing, I think, is so important, to just be with what's here and sort of offering a space for fear to have its voice. And then what I love to do is kind of put them in dialogue, and then just imagine your most wise, compassionate self. What would you say? What would you say to that fear? And often that's intuition, and that can kind of bring you to your answer. And if you can't access that part of you, because sometimes we can't, it feels too high stakes. And these decisions that we make as human beings in our lives, like they can have really far-reaching consequences, and it can feel like a lot, to make these big decisions when we come to these choice points. And if you can't access that within yourself, to imagine, the wisest, most compassionate person you can imagine, and maybe you've been lucky enough to have someone like that in your life. And even if they're here or not here anymore, but like I think most of us, or even like from a movie or a show, to just access like a grounded presence that's regulated, in terms of like nervous system, it's a strong, regulated voice that can come into dialogue with this fear, and offer some reassurance and try to take the urgency and pressure down. And if you listen to what that voice is saying, it's, I find the answers are often there.
I agree.
And it just takes it down. It takes down the pressure. And once those parts and that fear is more regulated, you can access that more peace and more clarity from which a knowing can come forward. But I think it's really, a lot of it is just, is just feeling dysregulated and feeling pressured to have to make a choice. Yeah.
Right. And your intuition will not be hasty or feel urgent or scary. The voice will never be pushy. And it's so important to know it's a still, wise, loving voice. It's a very gentle voice, but a very truthful, certain voice. One of the things you mentioned was spiritual bypassing. And I think sometimes people have this idea, and there's a lot of it right now, like toxic positivity, spiritual bypassing, where people use spirituality to bypass the human experience. And I think you and I both agree, like for me, this human life is the vehicle through which the soul evolves. So everything that we encounter, everything that we experience is an opportunity for us to be a witness to our pain, to be a witness to ourselves, so that we can heal and learn from those moments. And that helps our soul evolve. Because I believe, it's not just one and done. I believe we're here we come into this life and we have the possibility to fulfill a destiny, which is to me, reach the highest potential of healing. It doesn't necessarily mean enlightenment. And to me, enlightenment, enlightened person to me is not someone who doesn't feel negative feelings anymore. An enlightened person to me is someone who can gracefully navigate the human experience and not get caught up in the turmoil and the turbulence and the chaos of feelings. And one thing I've witnessed is that my human life and my feelings is so important for me to tend to and be present for, so that I can heal and be the best version of myself. Repressed pain, disowned pain, ignored pain just creates depression and anxiety. And as I kind of imagine, is like the body's just full of like stored up garbage, that it doesn't need.